Hello, everybody. This is Gary Kay, and you are watching a special video edition of my Rants and Raves podcast. I am excited to be joined by Dan Jackson. Dan's with, obviously, Crestron, as you can see from that big banner in the back. So, Dan, first off, congratulations on a successful ISE and launch, or sort of, I guess I'd say relaunch of the NVX product line at the show.
Right. It was certainly a big splash there at the show, and I have to say, we got a lot of attention.
Yeah, so it was predicted and it came true that the big sort of overriding theme for 2017 was 4K, 2018 was AV over IP. Everybody was talking about products and services and everything moving towards the network. And obviously you have a solution in the NVX product line that is a 1 gig solution. And one of the reasons why we're doing this video cast today is so that you can do some little side-by-side comparison.
Right. You know, it's funny because if you walk around ISE, it's probably every other booth has video over IP. And so you as a customer go, how do I even pick between what's going on there? And so, you know, part of the reason we did this whole side-by-side setup is so you can actually see what this really means and what it really looks like.
Yeah, and I think one of the things that I think is important is that that people understand there's different ways of sending video over a network. We've been doing video over a network at H.264 for a long time. In fact, this Zoom conference is using that technology. But when you're talking about doing something in sort of a normal AV environment, you want to have real-time connectivity. You can't have any delay that is noticeable, especially when you have a real live person and an IMAG person simultaneously. So one of the demos that you have, well, let me let you go ahead and launch the demo side by side, and I'll sort of ask you some questions because I know that from my perspective, I know what the customers are asking.
Right. So what we did here is we have 3 different setups, all side by side. So first one over here, we have a ZV solution, which is based on the SDVoE product. We have the AMX SVSi solution over here, and then we have our NVX solution over here. And all these solutions are running through a extreme network switch, displaying the same content across these monitors.
Yeah, and so just for clarification's sake, obviously SDVoE is the 10 gig solution. The SVSi solution is also a 1 gig network solution. So in a lot of cases, and in my impression in talking to a lot of people on the show floor and talking to a lot of customers, that in comparing 10 gig to 1 gig, although I think that I see the point of what you guys want to compare 10 gig to 1 gig, which you're going to do a side-by-side demo, that's less of a apples to apples comparison because that's not what most of the customers are looking for right now. Is they're wanting to deploy AV over IP on a current network. So a lot of the reason why I think SVSi is the market leader right now is because of the fact that that's what they've been doing, and they sort of introduced themselves to the market before everyone else, in my opinion.
So, you know, everybody's looking at AV over IP is the future, right? And the word convergence, right? We've heard it for about the last decade now, which means you have to run on the network, which is the customer's network, right? Which means you have to then share with every other application that's running on the network, like your Zoom conferences, your phones, 20 other applications that are running on that network. And so that's why you really have to be in a 1 gig solution so that you can share with all those other guys that are all those other applications that have to be on that network. Otherwise, you're back to deploying a second network. And in that case, I mean, we have HDBaseT for that. We've had that for 10 years.
Mm-hmm. So I think what I'm mostly interested in is seeing how you compare to SVSi, since I think most people are going to compare you that way. But obviously, you've got all 3 companies there. So why don't you go ahead and do your demo?
Right. So what we have here, this is a 4K 60/444 resolution. Right, and what we're showing is computer content. So we have a spreadsheet, we have an image, and we have a counter, which allows you to see the latency between all the different solutions that are over here. So you want to cut into a close monitor. So
what are we looking at right here, right now? What monitor is that?
This is the SVSi solution. And so what you'll see over here is the text is a little bit fuzzy on the spreadsheet. Some of the things, the colors are a little bit washed out. Some of the text, as you get finer grains, a little bit harder to read. As you go over to the image over here and to the counter, you actually, it's hard to see without comparing, but the blacks are a little bit washed out. because you're not getting the entire color range that you want. And so, yeah, depending on the content that you're looking at, fine grained text, images, or the counter showing the latency, right? There's challenges with all of these things with that solution. And we picked these applications because, frankly, this is what people do, right? This is the type of thing you're actually using our solutions for, right? You're working on content, you're showing imagery. This is what people do in meeting spaces and in town halls and auditoriums where we're deploying the solutions. Now, if you compare that to what we have over in the NVX solution, the blacks are much deeper. The image looks a lot more full color. And then when you focus in on the text, you see the text actually looks as it should, real crisp lines.
And I will say this, that this demo was done live on the show floor, comparing the NVX to the SVSi product, and there was a clear difference between the NVX and the SVSi. The NVX definitely looked better. Now, what would you say to the people that would say, well, Crestron set this up so that they're going to look different, or they're going to look better because they did their own signal routing, or that they padded the signal? I mean, how do you respond to that? Because even doing a demo like this, I mean, I'm not there live. You're there live at your location. How do we know that this is a true fair comparison? And are you doing this in other places so people can come see it themselves?
So that's a good point, right? It's a fair question, right? What are you doing? Because you make the assumption, wow, there's all this difference. How would this be acceptable? This can't be real. But in fact, it is. And so we actually had customers that would come up and go, wait, switch the monitor inputs. And we would literally pull out the HDMI cables, switch the monitor inputs on the TV, right in front of you so you can see. And the problem followed the SVSi solution and was solved with the NVX solution. What we're also doing, though, is we're taking this setup you see here and putting this in all of our regional offices. Because you know what? You really have to be able to see it live. And the challenge for a lot of people is, they don't have the ability to get all this equipment in-house, do all these test setups, get all the imagery. So we're putting it in all of our offices. So it's really easy for everybody to see it live. And when you see it live, you can touch it and play with it, plug it, unplug it, and do whatever you need to do.
Yeah, one thing that I will say that I ran into was there are a lot of, right now, universities wanting to deploy AV over IP. A lot of companies are kind of standoffish about it a little bit because they're sort of waiting to see how things play out. But certainly, in my personal experience, there's a lot of universities that are jumping into AV over IP because the application is simple to justify it and cost-wise. So, what would you give? Like, are you willing to go do demos on site, comparing the two products for that before they do a purchasing decision? Because what I was stopped a number of times at the show by university people that said I was surprised when I saw the demo because they hadn't had a reference. And even one particular university in Australia, where the person had already deployed SVSi, was even questioning whether that he might want to switch over to NVX because of what he saw in your stand. So maybe it's a situation where they didn't actually have a comparative product at the time, meaning they installed the SVSi solution before the NVX solution came along. Would you be willing to go out and do these types of demos on their property so that they can see for themselves that that you're not sort of like doctoring the signal?
Yeah, absolutely. So our sales guys all have NVX kits today, and for the last several months, they've been running around giving live demos with NVX. But we will also supplement it for customers. So here's ours, here's the competition. Let's come to you and just show you, because in this world of network video and everything, you can't just say 4K 6444. That doesn't mean anything anymore because stuff is happening in the middle of that signal. So the only real way to test it out is to see it live with real world content, right? Anybody can put up a test pattern that looks funky and weird and is artificially crafted to exploit some very specific thing. But in real world content, that's where the proof is.
Yeah, and obviously you're taking a very, I don't want to say aggressive, but proactive approach to attacking this market because, let's be honest here. You are behind in the standpoint of you weren't the first to market with this product. SVSi was, and then they were purchased by AMX, who's obviously a control system competitor of yours. So you weren't the first to the market. So you're kind of playing catch up a little bit, but you're taking a very bold stand by doing a side-by-side comparison like this, publicly. I mean, you've done stuff like this in the past through videos that you post online that are shared socially. In fact, you actually did a video on this that was shared prior to ISE, on social as well, but not to this level, where in your booth you dedicated a whole section doing side-by-side comparison, and to the level of where you're willing to go out into the field and challenge anybody on the SVSi product.
Right. Well, look, SVSi has been out for, like you said, 7, 8 years at this point, but they really haven't grown that fast. I mean, they're there, but they haven't changed the industry. And we're at the point in 2018 where the industry is changing. Convergence is happening. People are really putting all this stuff on the network, changing what they're doing. They're not just building a separate network for video anymore. They're needing to bring this all together. So we're bringing this out here so people can actually see the difference, because we've also seen a lot of challenges where people will go, I don't want to do network video. Why? Because they had a bad experience with SVSi. And so we have to show them that, no, it can be good. It can be made better. It's not, network video that's bad. It was your experience with that company that was bad.
Okay, so you're accepting the challenge that you'll go out there and do demos side by side, and you want the opportunity to show how your product is better. I mean, obviously, in the setup in your stand at ISE, there was a difference. You could see the difference. I didn't actually think to ask you to switch the monitor inputs. That's a pretty smart idea. I just was trusting what you were telling me, that the signal was the normal signal routing. But obviously there are applications where you're going to want to push a ton of video across the network. Don't you think there's a place for 10 gig, or how do you think that's going to fit in? Because even on your own video that I saw on LinkedIn maybe 2 or 3 weeks ago, when you came across the SDVoE solutions, you even said they looked good. You weren't able to compare quality like you are with SVSi. You admitted that they're not. That there's not the quality difference there. It's more of the application. I think really what you're pushing is the applications difference.
Right. So if you're putting in a 10 gig solution, right, that means you're effectively on a separate network, a separate infrastructure to support all of that, because that doesn't get allowed on the customer networks, right, where they have to support video conferencing and all these other applications. So we've had that. We've had that for 10 years with HD-based-T. HD-based-T is a 10 gig signal transmission mechanism that runs on separate infrastructure, right? We've been doing that for a decade, and our digital media product line is, based on all of that success. We've been the leaders in that space for 10 years. So just because it's a network switch in the middle instead of a matrix switch doesn't change the world. Converging and actually getting on the customer's network, that's what's going to change our world.
Okay, so what you're saying is that, sure, the 10 gig is quality-wise is going to have more bandwidth, obviously, but you're saying that the application is such that people want to deploy it now on an existing network. Therefore, they're going to be more likely to move towards 1 gig because of what exists today. Is that right? Like, paraphrase that right?
Yeah, if you want to deploy something separate, we have a 10 gig solution too. It's called HD-based-T.
Right. Are your DM product line.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Okay. So, all right. So obviously, this doesn't come through a H.264 videocast, right? I mean, let's be real here. We're looking at a camera shot that at best your camera's 1080p, then we're compressing it down to H.264 across the network, and we're connecting North Carolina and New Jersey through who knows what between here and there network. So ultimately, they're going to have to see this in person. So I would challenge everyone. This is a brand new market, as you rightfully said, Dan. This is a brand new market. Everything is just starting. Even though the product's been out a while, the majority of the market is not going AV over IP yet. It's probably at the most 2 or 3% of the entire market even thinking about deploying it this year. So there's huge growth opportunity, and there's a huge movement that's going to happen over the next decade towards AV over IP. You need to get educated. So I'm challenging everyone, and that's why we're going to do all these videos, and that's why we're going to do all this education about AV over IP. And that's the theme of my keynote for 2018 that I'm going to be delivering 5 or 6 times this year, including Qualcomm and the Almo events, because everyone needs to get educated on this. So you need to get educated on this. You need to challenge SVSi and challenge Crestron to come in and do head-to-head shootouts so that, and if you're going to the 10 gig network, obviously bring in SDVoE as well and do these side by side. Don't just assume, no offense, Dan, don't just assume Dan's telling you the truth. Make sure that you get a chance to see this yourself. And I assume you'll be doing this at InfoComm as well, and what other shows that you might be doing between now and InfoComm.
Absolutely. Look, the proof is in the pudding, right? Look, NVX benefited from the 10 years of development that went into digital media, right? So it's not just about putting video on the network too. It's about EDID control, CEC, HDCP, all of these things that honestly, I think a lot of us take for granted at this point, right? A lot of these guys that are in the video over IP market, you never heard of them 2-3 years ago. So they're just doing stuff, right, to throw it out on the network. And you forget about all that experience, all those lessons we learned, all that pain that happened in the analog to digital conversion, right? That's all built right into this product. And honestly, that's why we're showing people, because we have trust, we have confidence, we know we're the best. So we'll come out and show you.
All right, so you can see the more information on the NVX product line at Crestron.com. Dan, thanks for doing this today. Congratulations on a successful ISE. I know you're looking forward to InfoComm, but you got a lot of work between now and then. And obviously, this is going to be the big pull in your booth at InfoComm. So you're going to be spending a lot of time doing these demos.
Absolutely. All right. Thanks a lot.
Thanks for joining me today on a special video version of our Rants and Raves podcast. Of course, you can see all of our ISE coverage at ravepubs.com. Click on the ISE banner and follow along there. Thanks again, and have a great day.